Shocking discovery in Greyhaven. Yesterday at first light, the workmen engaged to reflag the floor of the Greyhaven Meetinghouse, Easturney. 1764 prized up a rotten plank and exposed a flight of bricks leading down to a void not on any parish plan. Mr. Zebacroft, a mason of sound reputation, descended with a lantern. Moments later, cries rose up, and the bellman ran the street with his iron clapper, summoning the selectmen. In that chamber 8 feet by 6, without windows, were found a charred cradle, a stack of scorched prayer books, and a ring of iron sunk in the earthen floor. The ring was affixed by chain to a blackened post. On the walls, cut deep into clay, were letters and marks. The marks were of no alphabet we recognize, though Mrs. Eunice Merrick, widow, fainted upon the sight and, when revived, declared that one sigil resembled a brand once kept by her late husband. The sheriff caused the space to be cleared. In the ash of the iron ring's circumference lay fragments of bone, small as chestnuts, and the fused heads of 2 brass pins. The sheriff called them parts of human remains. The pins, said midwife Temperance Kettle, were of the kind used in swaddling clothes and shrouds. The sexton claimed ignorance, stating that the cellar was not on the Meetinghouse plan of 1778. Several old men nodded, as if to say Greywood hides many secrets. No person is named a suspect at this time. The Reverend Appleby admonished that we ought not conjure up witchery as explanation, but he made the congregation pray against works of darkness. Not long after, as the congregation whispered at their doors, smoke was observed from the derelict tannery by the river. Those who went to stamp it out reported seeing a child's footprint in the wet ash, only 3 toes. By day's end, the tannery roof fell in with a sigh of sparks and was lost. The town speaks of nothing else. The Gazette will follow developments closely, though we urge calm. If any reader knows of the cellar or of the marks cut therein, bring word to the Gazette office. A reward is offered for information leading to the identification of the remains. Let all remember, fire destroys not only timber and flesh, but testimony. Are you brave enough to keep listening? Because Greyhaven does not ask you to believe. It asks you to breathe what it breathed. Lard smoke and apple vinegar, horse sweat and the creosote tang that clung to every chimney in a town that, in 1819, counted 37 hearths for 1 street. The soil, rock-shot and stubbled with rye. The summer, brief and gnat-bitten. The winter, candle-lit and long. Picture it. Low saltbox houses with their backs bowed to the nor'easter, roof lines like stern brows pressed to prayer. A meeting-house painted whitewashed into ghost, a belfry that could be rung by 1 man or, on days of judgment, by 2. Fences of split rail, gates hung with iron latches hammered at Abbott's forge, and beside them the half-widowed orchards, each tree's trunk tarred against canker, each blossoming a white prayer against blight. The Merrick's farm sat at the edge of town where the peat turned sour and the cattails hid the river's black. There the soil offered up carrots shaped like fingers and turnips like the heads of infants. Daily life has a rhythm of fear and necessity. Men went to the field with scythes on their shoulders like thin crescent moons. Women rendered tallow in kettles that burped and popped, dipped wicks until the house smelled of sweet grease and smoke. Children carried water, caught eels, and slept in trundle beds. On Sabbath, heads bowed under the heavy hand of doctrine. Congregationalist piety clothed the town like a hair shirt, scratchy and intimate. Yet beneath the piety was barter and rumor. At Abbott's forge, a horseshoe might be paid for by a share in a hog come November killing. At Kettle's yard, a woman might bring a loaf and depart with a remedy for colic, caraway seed folded in cheesecloth to be steeped in milk. The post came by coach when the road permitted, bringing newspapers, needles, and quiet panic from distant catastrophes. And always the threat of fire. A careless ember could leap from hearth to thatch and write a town's name in flame across the night sky. So buckets hung by doors. Lintels bore sprigs of ash, for ash wood was said to be proof against lightning and witches both. Remember these things as I tell you the other things. The names, Appleby, Kettle, Croft, Abbott, Merrick. And remember that the Merrick homestead had burned before, once in 1802 when a stable roof fell in like a snapped jaw, once in 1811 when a hayrick made its own weather, steaming, then smoking, then flaring like the last thought of a dying star. People said spontaneous, which is how towns make peace with physics and guilt. You have not yet heard the little song the children sang when they passed the Merrick Lane. Cinder, Ember, ash, and smoke, Merrick's bread. The devil's yoke. Childhood knows how to put what it senses into rhyme. Now, do you stay or do you go? Hit subscribe if your courage holds, because Greyhaven is only just beginning to warm. November 4th, 1819. Saw to Mrs. J. Merrick, Eunice, much unwell after the cellar business. Pulse quick, eyes sunk. Gave her laudanum tincture and a tisane of willow bark. She does not like the taste of willow. Few do. Her daughter Lydia brought broth, which stank of last year's onion. They burn their soup like they burn their leaves. The town is in a fever of conjecture. According to Mr. Abbott, whose heart is sound but whose tongue is loose, the chamber under the Meetinghouse is a papist vault. Old men will find Rome under their bed if you let them. Reverend Appleby says the marks are Mason signs. I would laugh, but it is not mine to laugh. I am paid to keep living bodies alive, not the dead stories straight, the tannery fire, likely spontaneous. Tanner's floors are salted with malodorous compounds. You spill lime and bark liquor and lard drippings for long enough, and heat is born of their corruption. Heat has hunger. It eats onward, simple. Yet I confess an unease, all the pins fused in that ring under the Meetinghouse. Temperance Kettle says the pins are from swaddlings and shrouds. She knows such things. She has helped half the town into life and a fair share into death. When she looked into the pit, she put 2 fingers to her lips, as if to stop a word from leaping out. A word with teeth. Hush, she said to no one. To something. Abbott's boy Joel has a burn on his palm from fishing a coal out of his mother's oven to light his pipe. He swears the coal squealed. Boys swear too many things. On my way back from the Merricks, I passed their pasture. The fence is mended with green wood, which will warp as it cures. Poor husbandry. In the yard, a stump had been newly burned out to its roots, used as a charcoal kiln perhaps. Lydia stood near it, her cheeks smutted, her hair caught back with a strip of linen. She said, Mother will not sleep. The crackling keeps her. I said, what crackling? She said nothing more. Evening. Called to the forge. Abbott says his bellows exhale a sulfur stink. It is leather, tanned poorly. I prescribed vinegar. He can rinse the bellows with it. He looked at me and did not move. Do you hear aught, he said, when the wind is from the river? I said no. He said to try in the smallest hours. The cows do. I extinguished the lamps at 11, but the light in town would not go out. Do not put this down to hauntings. Call it a physician's fancy. Call it my own glass of Madeira taken too late. Still, I dreamed of a child's footprint with 3 toes, pressed into my chest like a brand. Woke to find my shirt sticking to me with sweat that smelled, not of man, but of grease smoke. Hear now the tale of the Merricks, old as the sprout that found a way between 2 stones. The first of them came over with a pocket full of tallow and a talent for coaxing flame that did not wish to be coaxed. Candlemen they were, and greasy with it. Their hands shone like pale fish in moonlight. They learned in the old country from monks who boiled wax with prayer, and from cut-purses who boiled fat with curses. In Greyhaven, when the church was nothing but a frame and the pastor a man with a shout, the Merricks lit the first Sabbath lamp. People praised them. People will always praise the hand that turns their darkness back a little way. But a thing about light, it breeds shadow. It tells secrets. It asks for meat. The Merricks learned early that tallow rendered from cow and sheep burned soft and honest. But tallow rendered from skin that once held back a human breath burns longer, brighter, warmer. In a winter like a locked jaw, that might be the difference between seeing your child smile and seeing your child stiffen. So say the old women when they drink. So say the men when they wake in the dark and put their heads into their hands. The Merrick's barn burned twice, and every time a sickness had lingered there first. Rot in the potatoes, rot in a wife's lungs, rot in the soul of a son who wished for a girl who did not wish for him. Burn it clean, the people said. Fire is a broom. Ephraim Merrick, the late, God rest him, had a brand iron that he kept wrapped in cloth in the eaves. It was not a maker's mark for cattle. It bit a circle that had teeth like flames turned inside out. The brand was a wedding gift from his father, they say, and from his father's father before that, and under every Merrick hearth the same sigil was scratched into the stone and filled over with ash.
If a child was born blue and uncrying, they would warm the brand and pass it near the tiny mouth.
Not touching, the mark did not kiss babies, but hovering like a magistrate's question. If the child gasped, that was good. If the child did not, that was a necessity. The Merricks fed. Their firewell, a hog, a clutch of wet chicks, a dog that bit. And when the river flooded in 3 and took a man and his wife in a boat, people watched the Merrick windows. They said the candle there burned all night, steady and unflinching, though the house had a draft that could unbutton a shirt. Lydia Merrick grew up listening. She knew which floorboard would cry out and which rung of the ladder wanted to splinter. She learned to speak softly to the flames the way some girls learn to pour tea without a sound. Her mother told her to marry a sailor, for sailors know what it is to bargain with an element. Lydia said she would stay. The farm had hold of her ankles like a hand under the marsh, and so the secret stayed with them as a sweetness that sours. Folklore is a road with 2 ditches. In one ditch is superstition, and in the other is fact. Walk the road and keep your feet dry if you can. But the Merricks walked with 1 foot in each ditch and never learned to mind the wet. Unlawful interment, possible infanticide, ritual abuse. Greyhaven Meetinghouse subcellar, 3 to 8 November 1819. Subcellar discovered under the nave during repairs. No legal record. Entrance hidden under plank, non-original. Contents: iron ring set in floor. Chain, iron, 4 feet. Ash residue encircling ring. Charred cradle. 3 scorched psalters, titles illegible. Wall carvings, circle with radial glyphs, approximate 13 lines. Found in ash. Small bone fragments. 2 fused brass pins. 1 fragment of jaw, unconfirmed species. Dr. Pike indicates human probability. Zebacroft Mason. The air down there moved like it had lungs. Reports of fresh scorch distinct from old soot. Temperance kettle. Midwife. Identified pins as from infants swaddling in burial shrouds. Said hush repeatedly. Changes topic when asked about Merrick deliveries. Reverend Samuel Appleby denies knowledge of chamber. Admits his predecessor, Reverend Whitcomb, decked 1799, made accommodations for zealots. Refuses to elaborate. Eunice Merrick, widow, fainted upon seeing the glyph. Later under laudanum, mentions the ring and the promise. Lydia Merrick, daughter, hands blistered. Ash under nails, claims from hearth chores. Joel Abbott, apprentice, states he saw a fox without hair slinking near Meetinghouse the night prior. Possibly diseased dog. Old tannery fire same day. Prints observed in ash with 3 apparent toes. Croft says could be split hoof. Dr. Pike unsatisfied. Reports across 2 decades of unsolved barn burnings. Merrick, 1802-1811. Hobb, 1809. Pierce, 1814. Suggest pattern. Fire as remedy. Seized from Merrick barn loft. Wrapped brand iron, sigil matching subcellar carving. Ash-stained ledger with dates and brief entries. See below. Ledger entries. Samples. Yan. 20. 1798. First light. She breathes. April 4, 1802. Rot stopped. Marber 16, 1811. Kept the promise. Aughrim 2, 1817. Lydia's hand steady. Greyhaven relies on open flame for heat, light, and work. Fires occur. People make sense by story. Beware confounding superstition with crime. Yet the brand and ledger imply ritual. Promise recurring term. Promise to whom? Question Rev Appleby about predecessor. Watch Merrick homestead at night, discreetly. Consult Massachusetts law. Unlawful disposal of remains. Felony. Retain Dr. Pike for bone analysis. Inquire at neighboring towns about similar glyphs. Kettle mentions Covenant of Cinders. Record unknown. I dreamed of a bell that was filled with flame instead of sound. Woke with a nose of soot. This is foolishness. I record it to shame myself out of it. You want to know why Greyhaven kept its mouth shut as long as it did? Because the cold here is not a shrug. It is a hand that finds your wrist and stills your pulse. Men with blackened knuckles and women with cracked lips will make bargains with whatever speaks back. The Merrick's fire spoke back. The town noticed oddities and explained them away. Mr. Flagg, the wheelwright, saw Lydia carry a pail of coals across the lane without spilling a spark. Said it was a balance born of practice. Mrs. Pike, doctor's wife, smelled roast meat on the wind on Candlemas when not a spit turned in town. Said someone had burned a ham. Little Amelia Armitage swore the candle in the Merrick window grew taller as it burned. Children say such things, and Reverend Appleby, when he found a scorch beneath the baptismal basin, said the old wood was dry as parchment, and that was all. But oddities stack. The forge's bellows whined as though they'd swallowed a thing that wanted out. The church bell rope left pitch on the hands like sap and like blood. A clutch of piglets were born with their toes fused, and the farmer said it was the boar's father's fault, though his father had died 5 years ago. And under all of it, the hiss you can only hear when the river freezes and the world becomes a held breath. The hiss of something in the Merrick chimney counting. Who told the first big lie? Might have been Temperance Kettle when she said the fused pins. Under the church could be from a broken bonnet. Might have been Sheriff Prynne when he said no cause for alarm and scratched his name on a notice his hand did not steady to sign. Might have been Dr. Pike when he wrote human probable and did not write infant. We build towns out of stories and then stories out of towns. Greyhaven's stories were oak barrels hooped tight. If pressure builds, the hoops pop. Ask the tannery roof how it felt to sigh into flame. Ask the ashes that remember. You want the secret, don't you? Here's the tinder. The Merricks made a promise. To the thing that lives in the seam where warmth meets hunger. They called it by a kind name. The keeper, like a man who tends a light. They said, keep ours, and it did. But every keeping is an accounting. That ledger in the loft, it wasn't for corn. It was for debts. Now see the sparks jumping off the log? See how they look like little men running with lanterns? That's how the Covenant of Cinders runs. For miles, for years, house to house, town to town. A secret will not stay put. It's ember-footed. It walks. I did not want to speak, sir. But I am bidden in my dreams and woken by the smell of it, and I am tired of being woken. I was 8 when Father took me by the hand to the barn at night. There were lanterns, and the brand sat in the coals until the iron was as red as a robin's breast. Father told me we would cure the blight in the root cellar, potatoes like gray tongues. He said the keeper loved order, and blight is a kind of lawlessness. He spoke the words. I do not think you should write them. They're like burrs. Once on you they cling. The first debt I saw paid was a rabbit, brought by a boy who cried without tears. It squealed when the hot iron came near. I do not know where the sound went after that. It went into the rafters maybe and lives there still. Mother said the keeper saved me when I was a blue baby. Said my first breath was the iron's ghost of light. She taught me to hold my hand over a flame until the skin hummed. We descend from light keepers, she said, from men who trimmed wicks on ships so that lives could return to harbor. We are benevolent. I said yes because a child knows to agree or else. When the Meetinghouse men found the chamber, I knew what it was, though I had not seen it. My father spoke of it when he drank, said Reverend Whitcomb had more courage than Scripture requires, and that not every baptism is water. I did not go down the steps. I stood at the top and smelled felted ash. It has a felt smell, and the pins. There is a whiff to brass that has met a flame while it holds the shape of a child's garment. I know that smell. I took the brand to the loft because I thought if I hid it, the keeper would go. But this is a thing like bees and honey. You cannot take the hive and not have the bees mind it. The night I hid the brand, the tea kettle began to sing without water, and the door latch warmed until my skin stuck to it and left my likeness there. You ask about the print at the tannery, the 3-toed. I have seen such feet. They belong to the men who come to our back door on fog nights. They carry corn husks bound with ribbon. There is meat in them, wrapped like babies. They never speak. Father called them cousins. Mother called them brothers. I call them what they are, men who were once men. The Covenant. There is one more thing, and then I must stop because my mouth tastes of penny coins. There is a hole in the hearth behind our stove, a nest where ash drifts like feathers. If you put your hand in, you will not touch the brick. Your hand will go into the place where heat lives before it is brought to wood. I have put my hand there. Something kissed me. The mark is low on my wrist, see? It is in the same shape as the ring under the Meetinghouse, but smaller. I did not scream. If I scream, it comes. Please, Dr. Pike, take the ledger. Burn the brand. Do not let the sheriff keep them. He will put them into a box and the box will smoke, and then he will swear mice pissed and set it off. Mice don't do that. Men do. Men who need warmth that belongs to someone else. Public notice. By decree of the selectmen, an inquest shall be held at the Meetinghouse, November 11th, 1819, to examine the matter of unlawful remains and fires. All persons possessing knowledge shall present themselves. Signed, N. Prynne, Sheriff. Sheriff Prynne. Miss Merrick, do you swear? Lydia, I do not swear. I will tell you. Sheriff, then tell. Lydia, there is a ring in our heart. There are those who come with debts. My father made a promise. Reverend Appleby. Objection. This is heresy. Temperance Kettle. Sit, Reverend. Let her speak. Dr. Pike. Let the record show a mark on Miss Merrick's wrist consistent with contact burn, not accidental. Patterned exhibits. Brand iron with sigil. Ledger with notations. Charred cradle fragments. Pins. Public reaction. Murmurs. A woman sobbed. Mr. Abbott swore softly. Witness. Reverend Appleby admits knowledge of Reverend Whitcomb's private expiation room, built during the winter of 1796 after 3 infants died in 1 week, and the town demanded extraordinary intercession. Whitcomb believed heat purges corruption. He died in a chimney collapse. The chamber's existence thereafter is unrecorded. Witness. Temperance Kettle testifies she was once instructed to bring a stillborn to the Meetinghouse at midnight and refused. Admits others might not have refused. Witness. Zeba Croft confirms glyphs matched Brand's tooth ring. Says he found ash in the Meetinghouse more fresh than other soot, like a stove still warm. At sundown, the bell began to ring without a hand on the rope. The sexton swore he had tied it. Mr. Flagg, the wheelwright, leapt to the belfry and found the rope slick with pitch and hot as a tong brought from coals. He thrust his sleeve over it and pulled to still it. The sleeve smoked. The bell quieted. Outside on the lane came the criers, men with cloth-bound bundles in their arms, faces ash-smeared, feet bandaged and, in some cases, altered. 3 toes made from 5 with twine. They walked like men whose feet were taught another shape. They did not knock. They stood as if waiting. When the sheriff's men raised muskets, the bundles in the criers' arms moved and mewled. The criers began to sing. The tune was the children's rhyme, but slowed, and the words changed. Cinder, ember, ash and breath, share the heat or winter death. Panic splintered calm. A woman clawed at the sheriff, shouting that her baby was born lightless and God owed her heat. The judge's gavel cracked. Temperance Kettle stood and raised both hands. "Stop," she said. "This is a town, not a kiln." Then the accident, or the intention, made truth show its teeth. A lantern fell from its peg, crashed on the flagging, and oil spread like a skirt. Flame ran the seam of the floor straight toward the trap where the sub-cellar mouth yawned. The flame dove like a thing that knew its home. And from that dark below a rush of warm air rose. The Meetinghouse exhaled. For a second, every candle in the town leaned toward that breath, as if listening. Order given. Water line to the Meetinghouse. Arrest of the criers. Custody of the brand and ledger to Sheriff Prynne. Addendum. A baby's cry heard from below. Investigation suspended for dawn. Night watch set. We widen the lens now, and the ash flecks your tongue across counties. Greyhaven is not alone. From Marble Harbor to Ossipee, from mill towns with brick chimneys to upland farms where the wind goes mad. The same pattern. Quiet barn burnings, ledger words like promise, infants christened by heat. Midwives who will not speak a name but know its weight on their tongues. They call it the Covenant of Cinders, and it travels with famine, with winter, with wars that draft men and leave cold behind as a second census. Its theology is crude and exacting. Warmth is grace. Heat is proof. Flame is the angel that passes over if fed. Its priests are practical. Candle makers, blacksmiths, tanners, hearth tenders. It grew out of nights when mother and father lay with the infant between them and felt the tiny cold as an indictment. It grew out of towns where the church roof leaks and the woodpile dwindles, and a man's pride cannot be split into kindling. It promised, "Tend me, and I will tend you." Across the ocean, there were whispers of St. Florian's guilds turned inside out, of coal wives in Staffordshire who fed small things to banked fires when pay was weeks late. On our coast, there were whalers who swore the trypots sang if the oil was human-tinged, and they put fingers to lips and said, "Hush." And the Merricks, oh yes, the Merricks, are a spine in that beast. Their brand is a signpost on a secret road. That road goes through Rhode Island taverns where the cellar stays warm without wood. It goes into ship's forecastles where sick men recover too fast under a hot lamp. It goes into the Greyhaven Meetinghouse because a reverend was tired of burying it. There is a structure to it, like a trellis. Keepers, carriers, criers. The keepers tend the core. The carriers move heat, debt bundles between towns. The criers present the choice at doors at night in fog. Will you share the heat? People always swear they will never take a bundle. People always do what cold tells them to do at 2 in the morning. And then there is the mathematics, the ledger you saw. It tallies paid and owed. If a cow is given, a fever is spared. If a pig, a blight is stayed. If something is larger, winter comes easy. If a baby is born slowly, the iron is passed near, and the baby gasps and grows up to sing to flame in a voice that does not crack. You think this is superstition? Feel your cheeks. Do you smell the char in your hair? Because the covenant is not an idea. It is a practice, written into the wrists of towns by necessity, and the willingness to be cruel if that cruelty warms a child. And once it is written, it is hard to unwrite. Ink sinks. Ash stains. This is the part in the video where we show a map, moving embers creeping from county to county. Press pause if you need to drink water. Are you brave enough to keep listening? Because the last chapter is a verdict, and verdicts burn. Sheriff's closing report, December 12, 1819. Proceedings following the night of the criers. At dawn on November 12th, the Meetinghouse cellar was entered with buckets and ropes. No infant found alive. Bones confirmed human, infant-sized. Dr. Pike, at least 3 distinct. The brand iron and ledger presented at court. The ledger's entries aligned with dates of known fires and illness abatement. Reverend Appleby, tearful, confessed negligence in permitting his predecessor's works to remain unknown and unbroken. Arrests 3 criers taken into custody. 2 escaped into fog. 1 died of burns to feet. Bindings had cut the blood's way. The dead carried in his belly the scar of a brand matching the Merrick sigil, a circle of teeth. Temperance Kettle testified fully, saved from slander by the town's women who stood with her around the bar like a palisade. Verdicts. The 3 criers found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder. Sentenced to the gallows. On December 1st, they died in a ragged snow while the bell refused to ring. Eunice Merrick charged as accessory to unlawful rites. Sentence commuted to transportation. Died of fever at sea, report via Salem. Lydia Merrick, note, underage at time of earliest offenses. Demonstrated cooperation. Released under condition of service to Temperance Kettle as assistant midwife and to Dr. Pike as nurse, 2 years. She accepted. Meetinghouse rebuilt with stone floor. Subcellar filled with slate and lime. Ring and chain melted down and recast into a plowshare sold at auction for the poor. Ordinance against concealed vaults under any public building. Establishment of a public warming house, funded by tithe, kept by Rhoda, so heat is charity, not debt. A watch to be kept on births. Any infant death to be recorded within the day and buried under oversight. The parsonage chimney dismantled and rebuilt with a cap against downdraft voices. Attendance at Sabbath fell for a month, rose thereafter. The children's rhyme changed. They now sing, cinder, ember, ash and light, warm us clean and warm us right. 3 houses burned by accident in the weeks after. The town's hands shook on lamp handles. Dr. Pike collapsed in his surgery one morning and dreamed for 3 hours of a bell full of flame. He woke with Lydia's hand on his brow, cool. 2 nights after the hangings, gray ash fell like snow from a clear sky. Men who tasted it said it tasted of salt pork and tears. It lay thickest at the Merrick Lane. In the ash, prints, 3-toed and otherwise. They went to the river and into it. The river steamed where they ended. No wood was burned that night. Still, the town stank of hearth. Lydia's hand is steady with instruments. She speaks gently to laboring women. When she warms swaddlings by the stove, she does not lift them too close to the grate. The scar on her wrist has paled. She keeps to a routine of water and soap with a fervor that would make a bishop blush. She told me yesterday that the keeper speaks no more, but guards have words even in silence. A thing that asks for meat, she said, learns hunger from us. If we starve it, we starve the part of us that made it. I asked if she pitied it. No, she said. I pity us. On cold days, the warming house burns all day. Children come to thaw mittens and choose between 2 baskets, kindling and stories. They take a stick and they take a tale, of ships, of saints, of harvests that came right without bargains. They learn that a candle is a promise you can keep without a ledger, if you hold it for your neighbor's hand, and not for a ring on the floor. Temperance says that is how we begin to write over the ash. I have not gone to the Merrick homestead since the lane turned to marsh. The house bulges inward now, as if it sags toward something below. When wind rides the river, the chimney moans. I am a physician trained in humor and in bones, and I declare that a town is a body with vessels and organs and waste. And if a fire lives in the wrong chamber, it will burn what it thinks and what it loves. We must keep our hearts where they belong. On the last night of the year, Lydia brought a lamp to the Meetinghouse rebuilt. It burned a clear small flame. She set it on the stone where the ring was buried and said no word. We watched. The flame would not lean toward the floor. It burned upright. People breathed. Outside, the snow reddened, not with blood, but with dusk, and the bell, new, hung, modest, spoke only when we asked it to. We walked home with our breath in front of us, warm, owned by us, given freely, not taken from anyone's throat. That is the end for now, because endings, like embers, are round. If you pick this story up again, warm your hands at it, and then pass it on. Not the hunger part. Only the light. The end.